It's not just people that come here for a magnificent holiday and enjoy these beautiful beaches and I suppose paradise, one could call it. But you'll be amazed at the amount of South African businesses that have come here and they're operating out of Mauritius. Well, there's nobody better to talk about this than the president and the vice president of the South Africa Chamber of Commerce in Mauritius here. I've got Miro Dvorak, and also joining us on the program is the president of the Commerce. It's Richard Robinson. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us on the program. Why is it necessary for there to be a South African Chamber of Commerce of Mauritius here?
Leanne, I think that the requirement came probably about 2008. I think South Africa became, or Mauritius became, quite a favourable jurisdiction for a lot of South African businesses. And at that stage there were approximately 3,500 South Africans on the island, which is at its peak. And they needed a voice, first of all, to be heard with government. And I think there were networking opportunities amongst those people that they actually wanted to interact with each other. And the Chamber was formed for those reasons, and also to try and attract further business, further trade between Mauritius and South Africa.
Yeah. I mean, if we have to look at the amount of South African companies that are actually operating in Mauritius, what are we looking at now? What are the numbers looking like?
It's a very difficult call, because I think the majority of South African businesses operating here are in the offshore sector. So they don't have necessarily much of a physical presence in Mauritius, and they don't necessarily have people on the ground. That's all changing slowly, but it's very difficult to pin that number down. But I would think it's in the thousands.
So it's definitely in the thousands.
Oh, absolutely.
And big names. I mean, we're dealing with the big guys. I mean, you were mentioning something like Nando's is here, Investec is here, Aspen is here.
No, it's amazing. It's all the big brands that you'd be familiar with in South Africa are here. The very big listed entities all have, or not all of them, but certainly a lot of them have operations in Mauritius.
Miro, let's bring you into the conversation as well. But when we're talking about these big companies, why? Why do they want to have a presence in Mauritius? Why do business in this place?
You know, 10 years ago, Mauritius's economy was based on 3 pillars: sugar, textiles, and tourism. Now, Mauritius, unlike other countries, doesn't have resources where they can manufacture or mine or anything of that sort. So what Mauritius did, and quite wisely, was they said, you know, we're going to grow our economy, we're going to jump the step of manufacture, and we're going to go into trading in services. And we want to make this environment as business friendly as we can. In fact, if you Google, or it's not Transparency International, but if you Google all these surveys they do around the world, Mauritius stands number 1 in Africa in terms of doing business.
Wow.
Why? Okay, so 10 years ago they brought in legislation to really fast track and make it attractive for businesses to be able to operate here. Everyone says, Mauritius, because we're a tax haven. It's not true. It's a low tax jurisdiction. Government here generates income by facilitating people to do business in and from Mauritius, thereby increasing turnover, thereby employment, thereby skills, thereby more income generated. And the tax rate here, for example, is 15%.
Yeah.
But that isn't the driver. It's the ease of doing business.
What does this do for South Africa, though? I mean, when these companies come to Mauritius, they're operating out of Mauritius because of it's easier to do business here. What does it do? Does it have an effect on the South African economy?
I don't think it takes away from South Africa, because it's the business actually opening up a different venture and opening up a new line and avenue. So it's not taking business away from South Africa. And realistically, I mean, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the size of South African economy. It really is small.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as a threat to South Africa at all. What they've done from a labour perspective, the new government has been very, very, what's the word? I think they've been progressive.
Yeah.
They've morphed and they've kind of bastardized capitalism and socialism. So they realize that the only way to continue in this friendly environment where labour actually stands a chance is actually to uplift the very poor rather than treading on the wealthy.
All right, guys, thank you so very, very much for joining us here on the program. It's really been fascinating.
Pleasure.